welcome back for those of you that were here last night. So, who was here last night, just out of interest? Put your hands up if you're here yesterday. Okay, not bad. That's a sort of a 70% return rate. That's not too bad. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, well, thanks very much for coming out. I don't know if it was raining out there just now, but it was raining earlier. Lovely Melbourne weather. No, I don't need the Wi-Fi. Thank you very much. Okay, cool. Okay, so welcome to Block Party 1 Day 2, Australia's first blockchain and cryptocurrency super week. Yeah, hope you enjoyed last night. We actually did live stream it. However, there was some footage for the first 9 minutes of me flapping about with Jason, which we've now taken down and we've re-uploaded it without those bits and pieces. So hopefully tonight's live stream will be slightly better editorial quality. Okay, excellent. So yeah, Block Party 1, day 2. Cool. So we've actually got some social media that you can connect with. So we've got a Facebook page, which is Blockchain Center, Twitter, Blockchain CTR. We've got an Instagram account, and we've also got LinkedIn, and we're also on a WeChat as well. So if you've got a WeChat there, you can scan that QR code, and hopefully that's big enough for you. And if you just want to take a picture of that right now and upload it later. So WeChat is obviously a huge community, and many of our company members and the community use WeChat to communicate. Okay, cool. So the Blockchain Center. So yeah, so just a couple of minutes about the Blockchain Center. So established in November 2014, the world's first Bitcoin blockchain knowledge hub, focusing on education, co-working and community events. We do actually have a free co-working day every Monday, so if you are looking for a co-working space, if you're doing a business that's involved in Bitcoin blockchain technology, come by. You can grab a desk for free for the day, and you can sort of check out the surroundings there. And later on, after these presentations tonight, we're going to be having some drinks and nibbles over at the centre as well, so you're welcome to come back to the centre afterwards. And if you have any of you not been to the centre before? Who hasn't been to the Blockchain Centre? Oh wow, okay, excellent, about nearly half of you. Great, so we've tried to make it quite a sort of a unique co-working space. So the idea is to inspire as well as educate. So we have the world's only Bitcoin mining museum, we have a full node running, we have the Satoshi white paper, we have some really cool custom artwork, graffiti. So it's quite an interesting experience people have at the Blockchain Center. Okay, cool. So yeah, a little bit more about the centre, and we do co-working, quite reasonable rates for a full-time desk. It's $350 a month, so it's pretty reasonably priced. But the idea is obviously for you to be able to connect with other people in the Bitcoin and blockchain ecosystem. We've had loads of community events in the couple of years we've been around, or nearly 3 years now. We've actually got over 3,000 members across a few different meetup groups, and all of our co-workers get access to free coffee, which is sustainable coffee from Tanzania. These are some of the meetup community groups that we co-organise. So Blockchain Center. So if you're not a member, please sign up. You just go to Meetup and Blockchain Center. Blockchain Melbourne is co-organised myself and Alan Sen. So they're not only for events that are at the Blockchain Center. And then Hyperledger Melbourne Meetup as well, where we've had a couple of massive events actually with members of the IBM team flown over to actually give these presentations. So the last one was with Nitin Gore. He's the global director for IBM Blockchain Labs. So he was here a couple of months ago, and it was standing room only here. It was over 250 people here. So yeah, the Hyperledger meetups, they don't happen so often, but when they do, there's a really big turnout. Cool. So Block Party 1, the series of events that's happening all week, is actually got some sponsors. So I'm just going to sort of say a couple of words about our sponsors for tonight. Also, they have exhibition banners just along here as well. So if you want to know more about what they do, just go up to the exhibition banner there and you'll see the web links, but I'll just give a quick intro into the sponsors. So first of all is CoinStop, and we've actually got the CoinStop team here tonight. So if you want to just look over there, there's the guys there, and they've got a CoinStop t-shirt on there, and they're actually selling hardware wallets as well tonight as well. So CoinStop is Australia's leading cryptocurrency hardware wallet provider, authorised resellers of both Ledger and Trezor, which are two of the leading hardware wallet manufacturers in the world. So you can visit their website, coinstop.com.au. We've also got Indorse, who will be actually part of the presentation tonight. So they're a decentralised professional network powered by Ethereum, a reliable channel to get your skills endorsed and showcase them, a network that lets you own your own data and monetize your activity. So a new application of using Ethereum blockchain technology, and the website is indorse.io. Blockchain Global, who is a leading Australian Bitcoin and blockchain investment company, and it's the main corporate sponsor and anchor tenant of the Blockchain Centre. And we've got ACX. ACX is Australia's largest liquidity pool and order book for Bitcoin in Australia. So we've also got flyers for ACX as well. So have any of you got an account with ACX? Put your hand up if you have an account with ACX. Okay, so 90% of you haven't. So if you grab one of those flyers, then when you sign up for ACX, you'll get $10 credited to your account, and then you can use that $10 to buy Bitcoin, and then you can send it out to a Bitcoin wallet you control, or buy something online. So it's just an easy way to sort of get started if you haven't used cryptocurrency before. So the website is acx.io, and grab yourself a $10 flyer there on the way out. Cool. Hcash. So Hcash is a decentralized and open source cross-platform cryptocurrency. Website is h.cash. They recently did quite a large sort of ICO, mainly based in China. And so they basically got a affiliation with Monash University and a couple of other universities to actually try to work on building this platform. Now they've done the fundraise, they're now looking to try to build this platform. So you can check them out there. And Norn is a new AI-infused smart business system currently under development. You can find out more information by visiting their website, and it's nornear.io, and their banner's just up there. So cool, so that's a little bit about our sponsors, and we thank them for making this week possible and helping with the expenses. Okay, cool. Also, for about a year or so now, we've been supporting a local charity business called The Big Umbrella, and we're really fortunate to actually have the founder of The Big Umbrella here tonight, and his name is Justin Dickinson, and I think he's should be around here somewhere. So if we could like to come up onto the stage, Justin. And The Big Umbrella is actually celebrating their 7th anniversary tomorrow as well. So welcome Justin. So could you just give Justin a round of applause? Thanks very much. Okay, cool. So if we can share the microphone, Justin, that would be cool, and then we can get it on the video. So there's an actual slide up here, some stats about The Big Umbrella as well, and also So maybe I can ask you a question to kick you off, Justin. So what was your motivation, or what inspired you to start The Big Umbrella 7 years ago?
It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I guess I saw a problem and developed a solution to it. There wasn't so much a cause behind what I did. It was there was kids living on the streets, and I developed an idea that we could actually help them. And 7 years later, we've got one of the most successful rehabilitation street kid centres in all of Kathmandu, which is huge for us.
In Nepal, right?
In Kathmandu, Nepal, that's right. But in the last 7 years, what we've been able to do is create a platform for giving, not just overseas, but here in Australia. We've worked with over 22,000 volunteers, and in-kind hours, what they've given is over 66,000 hours. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's like 32 people working full-time for a year. And on a minimum wage, it's over $2.4 million in-kind value that we've given. And that, to me, is a social currency. And that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight. You're learning about crypto technology, is that right?
Cryptocurrency, that's it,
yeah.
Yep.
Social currency is another thing. It's what you're giving as a community, coming together to support, and not just learning about things, but also giving back. You know, it's a huge thing. Yeah, so in the process, we've rescued over 218 tonnes of food. We run the biggest soup kitchen in Australia. And if you go back to that slide you just had up, Martin, it's all funded by corporate team building events in Australia. So corporate Australia supports us to run these programs, and that's how we're able to be so successful, through team building events. Now, if I go back to the point of social currency, an in-kind value like on Facebook has the value for a not-for-profit of $214. Where they got that figure, I'm not too sure, but it's actually online.
Wow.
And it's in a report. So if there's 200 people in tonight and you all got on our page, the Big Umbrella, and liked us on Facebook, that's an in-kind value of $48,000 you just gave to our charity. So that's social value, and that's what you can do just by supporting the work that you're doing here at Blockchain Global Blockchain Centre with us. So, you know, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you did by coming tonight and donating to us. It helps us go a long way. We're a 100% volunteer-run organisation. Nobody gets paid, but that's how charities are these days. They're run by good people doing good things.
Great. Thank you, Justin. And if I can just ask you one more question, what do you see for the future of the Big Umbrella? Where do you see the foundation developing, and what are your dreams for the future?
The dream has always been is to create a not-for-profit that's sustainable. It's one thing to make a charity and to deliver to a cause, but if you can't sustain it, there's no point. So we're on the brink now of becoming a self-sustainable charity. And what I mean by that is we've got Social Enterprise Cafe, which is over here, and that funds the charity. It's a not-for-profit charity, not-for-profit cafe, and the profits go towards the charity. So it's like just developing a business, but in turn the business that gives its profits to the charity. So it's a sustainable model, and if we can pull that off, then in a few years' time we'll have a couple more of these, and we can branch out to do bigger and better things. But yeah, it's been a big road, and it's been fun.
Okay, thank you. And like, if people want to be able to sort of get involved or do more with the Big Umbrella, then you do these team building events, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And the guys from Blockchain came, was it last week?
Yeah, and
this is the second time they've been down to feed the homeless down at Flinders Street. We see over 200 people down there a night, and these are all rescued food. So whatever food's been thrown out from supermarkets and things like this, we rescue and feed people who don't have a meal that night. And that's the basis of what we do. It's pretty basic. We, feed hungry people with good people like Martin.
And it's really good fun. It's really good fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
it's
like,
we run 52 weeks of the year. We don't take a break. We do it over Christmas. A lot of other charities that do this seem to shut down over Christmas, but you got to sustain these things for the right reasons. So.
Okay, great. Okay, well, if you can join me by giving Justin a big round of applause, please. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Okay, thanks, man. Nice one. Thank you. Cool. Okay, excellent. So this is the first time that Justin's actually come to one of our community meetups here and stuff, and we've been raising money for a little while now, so it's a really privilege to have Justin here tonight to talk about the Big Umbrella. Cool. So moving on for tonight's main event, we're actually joined by Tom Nash, and then we're going to be Tom's going to be doing a presentation on Ethereum smart contracts, and then we're going to have the altar with some members from Indorse and some people to talk about Monero and Stratis as well. Okay, cool. So are you okay to jump up here, Tom? And
answering a couple of questions. I'm hopefully going to be telling all you guys what Ethereum is, and maybe why you should care about it. I'm sorry I'm a little bit nasally. I've got a bit of the flu, so tonight it's brought to you by Vicks Vapor Rub. Yeah, hopefully we'll get through it. So yeah, if you haven't joined all of these meetup groups, I highly recommend it. There's a bunch of events out there for people interested in blockchain around Melbourne. So yeah, get on all the meetup groups, and you'll hear about pretty much everything. So yeah, who am I? So my name is Tom Nash. I've done some work previously for WeTrust, building decentralized applications on Ethereum, dApps, and I built something called Pay with Ether, which allows you to take Ethereum payments on your WooCommerce website. So if you have a WooCommerce website, come and speak to me later, and maybe we'll set you up with an API key. Yeah, so, and one more plug, yes, the Alternative Facts Machine. My housemate and I built this website. It allows you to send Donald Trump's tweets as postcards anywhere in the world. So if you think that's a good idea, then I highly recommend doing it. So yeah, what is Ethereum? That's the question we're hopefully going to be answering tonight. And do you have to be a crypto nerd to understand? I don't think so. I'm not a crypto nerd. I don't really understand any of these kind of hashing algorithms or anything like that. But Ethereum hopefully can be explained from a fairly high level, so you guys should be able to get to grips with it fairly quickly. So yeah, let's continue. First off, is it Bitcoin? You'll be surprised how many people confuse these things. Ethereum is not Bitcoin. There are a few kind of concepts which are shared between the two. So first off, there's this thing called the blockchain. Everyone says the blockchain all the time. Blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. You hear it everywhere. Blockchain is an idea, right? So blockchain is a kind of idea for reaching consensus in a distributed way. Bitcoin and Ethereum are two implementations of the blockchain idea, right? Bitcoin kind of came around first. It was probably the first successful implementation of a blockchain. And Ethereum came around after, but it still uses the same core concepts, right? It's still a blockchain or an implementation of a blockchain. They both have a base currency. On Bitcoin, the base currency is Bitcoin, and you can flick transactions around with Bitcoins. On Ethereum, the base currency is Ether, right? So you can still there is still a currency that's used to kind of power the network. Does it do all the things that Bitcoin does? Yes, pretty much. There are a few things, a couple of idiosyncrasies in the protocols, but pretty much safe to say yes, it does all the things that Bitcoin does. So that means it can send, value from one place to another. So is it an altcoin? So altcoin is usually a word that's used to describe a project which maybe doesn't really do anything revolutionary, anything particularly innovative. It just takes kind of the Bitcoin or now Ethereum ideas and kind of switches them around a little bit, changes some values, some variables, redeploys it and says, hey, we're a whole new project. Sometimes there's some merit to those things. So examples of altcoins would be, until fairly recently, Litecoin would be an altcoin, Dogecoin, if anyone's ever heard of that. A couple others as well. Someone mentioned to me one time about the vegan coin, like the vegan initiative coin. No idea. Vegans, blockchains, what's not to get, right? So what sets it apart from all these things? What makes it not an altcoin, also not Bitcoin? Like, what's this thing Ethereum? What does it do that's completely different? That's fairly interesting in my opinion. It's a computer. So yeah, it's a pretty wild concept to kind of wrap your head around. So Ethereum is basically a giant distributed computer. So imagine everybody in the world is using exactly the same computer. The computer shares state across absolutely every participant. Everyone's using exactly the same version. If I press a key, it's replicated on all of your machines. And that's the kind of concept behind Ethereum. That makes it kind of rubbish. It's pretty slow. The transactions per second is like, 14 or something. It's not particularly quick. It's not particularly efficient computer. But it's one on which absolutely everybody shares the state. And with that, you can do some pretty interesting things, which we'll get into. So yeah, what kind of computer is this? I can't even see my own slides, so I'm going to have to stand here. So yeah, it's a singleton. So there is only one of these computers, right? There's only one instance of the computer. There is the Ethereum computer, and that's it. It's decentralized, which means it runs absolutely everywhere, right? Absolutely anybody can run an instance of this computer, provided you can compile the source code and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can't turn it off, right? It has no single off switch. You can't just go to a server room and press off and kind of Ethereum is gone. That's just not going to happen. As long as one person is still running the kind of Ethereum software, it's still going to exist. The Ethereum computer is still on. It's verifiable, so it's kind of predictable, right? If you give the same function, the same arguments, it will return the same result, right? In the vast majority of cases. So that's pretty cool. It means we can kind of predict what the computer's going to do, which is a good thing, right? You wouldn't really want a computer which, you press a key and then you press M and then Z comes up. That would be stupid. So that's a good thing. It's atomic, which means it's kind of never broken. So if anybody has ever heard of atomicity in the context of like a transaction, for example, with a database, basically what that means is when you do a transaction, so when you try and modify the state of this computer, you change some value in memory or whatever. If that operation fails, if it gets to a point where it's like, oh, this is an incorrect operation and it can't work, the computer will just roll everything back and pretend your transaction never happened. It will take the transaction fee from you, so it'll take a little bit of ether from you, but it will, for everyone else's sake, that transaction never happened. And it's natively multi-user, which means there are no logins. There's no registration platform for the Ethereum computer. As long as you kind of know the algorithm and can run it on some particular computer, you can create an account and you could potentially start mining, generating ether, and participating in the network with using the computer. I've lost the word, but there's no barriers to entry, right? Or the barriers to entry are very low. And what's good about computers is that they're programmable, right? You can write programs to run on computers. That's the whole reason that computers are, sticking around, is because you can actually turn them into a machine that's kind of all-purpose and does all the things you want to do. And that's pretty amazing. And Ethereum is just like that. Ethereum is one computer that is programmable, and everybody shares the state. So that's pretty amazing. So, why do you want any of this? It's all well and good me standing up here telling you, oh, this is just some kind of amazing computer, but why is it better than a kind of traditional computer? Why wouldn't I just use a single server or AWS or whatever? So in traditional systems, a lot of the logic is black boxed, right? Which means that you don't really know what's happening with your data, right? So you send some data to a server somewhere, it does some processing and it returns a result. That processing, that part in the middle, is completely black boxed. You have no idea what's going on, right? Unless the company is going to let you look into their server operation and look through their code, you don't know what they're doing with the data that you send them. Which, can be good, can be bad. With Ethereum, it's all auditable, right? So every single program that you write and deploy onto the Ethereum network is public. Everyone can see it. Granted, it's in bytecode format and it's all zeros and Fs and As and Bs, but you kind of have to assume that people will be able to reverse engineer it at some point, right? So everything that you put on this computer is public. In a traditional system, a server can change its function at any one time. If I'm using a piece of code that I've downloaded from the internet, a program, and that program updates itself, I don't necessarily know what's been changed. I don't know what's updated or anything like that. It's kind of, you can be caught off. If you go to a particular website, one day it can present you some information, the next day it can present you something completely different, and you don't really know why. With Ethereum, the programs that you put on the computer are immutable. What that means is they cannot be changed. So as soon as you deploy a program onto the computer, it stays there forever, right? It's always going to be there, and it's always going to do what you've programmed it to do, and you cannot change it. So I can't give somebody the reference to my program, tell them to use it, and then sneakily go in and change it and make it do something malicious. That's impossible. In a traditional system, users generally pay with their data, right? How many of you pay for Facebook? Exactly. You are providing Facebook value by using it. In Ethereum, users pay with their gas, right? Which is just a small bit of ether. So you're actually paying to execute programs on this network. So what that means is there's a pretty good incentive to only use programs which are actually useful, and there's a pretty good incentive to only write programs which are useful. It's kind of prevents people from clogging up the network and making it unusable for people who actually have a legitimate use. In a traditional system, interoperability is usually dreadful. So what that means is if I want to interact with a proprietary system somewhere, I have to go and ask them for access codes, API keys, whatever. I have to figure out how their system works in order to interact with it. And that might not necessarily be easy. I have to talk to the representative of the other company, all this absolute nonsense, which really, really slows down the process of creating all these kind of intertwined systems and interconnected systems, which could eventually be incredibly powerful. On Ethereum, anything that you put there is, as I said before, public, and unless you've locked it down, anybody can use it, right? So anybody can use these programs, and integration is as easy as kind of understanding the source code and the interface, which the program will accept. So that's pretty awesome. That leads to some pretty complex projects. In a traditional system, most of the code that you're looking at or you're using is proprietary, right? It means you have no rights to take it, reuse it, make money off it yourself, which can be rubbish. Can be a good thing, but it can also be a fairly bad thing. And on Ethereum, all the code is inherently open source, as I said earlier. If you write a program and deploy it to Ethereum, it's public. There's no kind of, you could copyright it maybe, but it's public, right? So why is all of that useful? So now I've explained the kind of differences between traditional and traditional systems and Ethereum. Why is any of that useful? What can I do with it? So here are just a few examples of decentralized apps, or dApps. Again, I can barely see. So these are just a few. This is incredibly outdated. I first did this presentation months and months ago, and there are like infinitely more projects now. But to just go through a few of them and a few of the use cases, I think would be kind of cool. So Golem is a platform who are aiming to or a company rather, who are aiming to produce this kind of decentralized network of computing. So for example, if you have some spare processing power available in your laptop or your tower PC, you would be able to donate that to the Golem network so that people would be able to use it to produce kind of the results for complex computations. So their first use case, for example, is rendering. So if you have a 3D model, but you don't necessarily want to pay for AWS, you can just ask the Golem network. The Golem network will split it up into all these different parts, send it out to a bunch of people, they'll produce a result, and you'll get it back. And hopefully, it'll be cheaper than if you used a kind of big centralized provider. That's pretty amazing. WeTrust is the company, the guys I used to work for. We're doing community finance. So taking kind of informal community finance rules like savings groups and putting them in kind of formal smart contracts. Sorry, smart contracts are the programs that run on the Ethereum computer. So putting those in kind of formal contracts on the blockchain. Ethereum and Edgeless are two kind of gambling applications. So generally, if you've ever gambled online, like I have, like an idiot, and you've lost money, it's probably because you don't know how the system works, right? You put in $60 and you put it on red, and you don't know how it's choosing whether it's red or black, and you feel really cheated when you lose. So Ethereum and Edgeless are kind of like that, except you can see what's going on. You can see how the decision is being made, and you can verify that your odds of losing are, what they say they are, 1%, 2%, whatever. Gnosis and Augur, two really, really cool projects. They both want to build these kind of prediction markets. So prediction markets are a way to kind of crowdsource what people think is going to happen in the future. These things have kind of existed in the past in sort of centralized manners, and they've been found to be incredibly effective at predicting results of like horse races and things like that. So if you're interested in gambling, I highly recommend checking out these projects. I'm not a gambler, by the way. I know I'm giving off that impression, but that's not me. Yes, so they're very cool. I highly recommend checking those out. Economy Melonport, kind of decentralized asset management. So if you're a portfolio manager and you fancy yourself as a Warren Buffett, Melonport would allow you to kind of create a portfolio and allow other people to invest in your portfolio. If you make them returns, you get a little bit of a cut. Economy is somewhat similar, except they're kind of a centralized company doing all the investment for you, but they're using the Ethereum network in order to allow you to claim, what's rightfully yours, to prove that they've earned this much money and allow you to claim the returns that you should get from them. First Blood are doing competitive online gaming, so kind of taking a lot of the what do you call it? Taking some of the dispute resolution out of, or cheating out of kind of verifying results. And Aragon are a company who want to do kind of like decentralized organizations. So if you have a company, but you don't really kind of want to, you don't necessarily have a particular leader, but some people kind of step in and step out, Aragon will be kind of a cool place to launch a company and kind of do a bunch of things in a decentralized manner, such as pay and voting on kind of company direction and things like that. So yeah, check out all these projects if you're interested. They're all doing some pretty cool things. So yeah, one of the things, hopefully, that I kind of got across there was that a lot of these projects are kind of taking out the necessity for middlemen. So a smart contract oftentimes can replace a middleman one-for-one, right? If you're just kind of sitting in the middle of a transaction between two parties, all you're essentially doing is providing some sort of trust, right? You're putting yourself in the position of a trusted party who's saying, yep, I will verify that Mr. A pays Mr. B, or whatever. A smart contract can do that for you. A smart contract doesn't need anybody to trust it, because you can look through the code and you can agree to the contract itself. And it can execute clauses automatically. So yeah, that's one of the big advantages of using a smart contract. And IoT, so smart contracts, Ethereum, networks like Ethereum will probably be very, very useful in the realm of IoT. One small example, there's a company called Slockit, rather infamous these days, unfortunately. But what they did was make a lock, so a physical lock that you could put on your door, and you could essentially send an Ethereum transaction to it to unlock a door, which is pretty cool. You could essentially remove the need for Airbnb if you did that. So somebody wants to, come and stay in your house for a few days. You give them the address of your door, tell them how much to pay it. They pay your door, it unlocks itself. You don't even need to be in town. Pretty cool, also very scary, but pretty cool. Yeah, so hopefully that's been useful. I know I've sort of sped over that. I'm very conscious of time. I want to try and keep this to an hour. But we'll open the floor for like 10 minutes for a Q&A. If I've kind of missed anything or you haven't quite grasped anything. And then we will go into a demo. So I'll put up a smart contract. We'll kind of go through it. And we'll see kind of how we can use these things in the real world. So questions? Hello.
Hi. Especially when you went through the example projects, it seems like it's based on the idea of trust.
Mm-hmm.
But then you said if you get down to it, you have to understand the bytecode.
Yes.
To make sense of it, which seems like it's based on the idea of trust, but actually there's not much transparency unless you're willing to sit down.
Gotcha. So the question was, a lot of the projects in the kind of examples I went over, and you essentially have to trust the contract and that the contract is doing what you think it's going to do. Is that the correct assumption? Is that a correct read of the question?
Whereas it seems that the way the contract's represented is very difficult to understand.
Right. That's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be difficult to understand. So what you can do, so the way smart contracts work is I will write it in a kind of high-level language. The one we'll see later is Solidity. Then I'll write it, and then I'll give it to a compiler. So the compiler will then translate that into bytecode. And then I can deploy that bytecode to the Ethereum network. What I can then do is give the source code to anybody else, tell them which compiler version I used, and they can verify that that compiled contract matches that bytecode exactly. So they can know with pretty much full certainty that they are using the contract that you've deployed to the network. So that's the way to get around that. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, so all of the projects that you just showed us,
Mm-hmm.
they're all built into the blockchain, Cyril?
Sort of. So there are certain. So the question was, are all the projects that I showed you built into the blockchain? Kind of like the meat of the project is built into the blockchain, if that makes sense. So a lot of these projects will still kind of use servers and some proprietary code to make the user experience really nice. But the actual kind of core of the project uses the blockchain to provide value for their customers. And a lot of these projects actually want to take themselves out of the equation in the future. So there might be a project now which is utilizing servers to provide a really nice user experience, but their future goal will be, oh, we actually don't even need to maintain anything. We can kind of step out of the picture because we've provided this kind of decentralized network of services. Yeah, we won't need to provide anything ourselves. So saying they're built into the blockchain is kind of, I wouldn't say they're built into it, but they are utilizing it. They're utilizing it to facilitate business aims. Yeah. Yeah, at the back there. The question was, can I please explain how and why forks happen? Yes, I can. So Ethereum is a network on which people mine. Currently, that's proof of work. So proof of work basically means I'm going to use up a load of electricity and I'm going to prove to you that I've done that and you're going to give me some money for it. And so that's why you have a bunch of miners. So miners are essentially these people doing that work. The blockchain consensus rules kind of state that the chain with the most blocks mined on top of it. Sorry, I'm not explaining this particularly well. What these miners do is they verify transactions, right? They get a load of transactions are broadcasted on the network. These miners pick up transactions and they bunch them up and they put them in a block. And then they submit that block to the network once they decide that it's valid, once they've hashed a particular valid number or valid string or whatever. So they submit that block to the network and they say, hey everyone, I've just produced a new block. And then the network will validate that block themselves. They'll go, oh yep, that looks okay. I'll start building a new block on top of that one, right? So that's kind of how the blockchain works. When a fork is when kind of two of those blocks kind of appear at the same time. So that's kind of, that's a fork. And that's pretty much it. So one set of people might start building on top of one block, and one set of people might start building on top of another block, and that would produce a fork. So that's generally avoided. Most people kind of want to stick to one chain. They don't really want two. That's what gives a blockchain value, is the fact that there is just kind of one chain and it's canonical. The reason certain forks happen is kind of, it can be different, right? Certain forks can happen for either technological reasons. So for example, the Ethereum network has hard forked a couple of times for the sake of actually improving the protocol that runs all this, the whole network, and it will hard fork multiple times again in the future. So yeah, most hard forks in Ethereum will be because the technology is changing, and that's the way to improve the technologies, to actually hard fork and kind of invalidate the other chain. And some hard forks happen for other reasons. Yep.
Do you really use to build a digital platform to combine different applications, social network, or CRM, inventory?
So the question was, can Ethereum be used to combine multiple kind of technological networks? Was that?
To build a digital platform.
To build a digital platform. Highly dependent on what you want to do with it, honestly. The answer would probably be yes, but again, it's very highly dependent on what you actually want to do. There are certain limitations with Ethereum. For example, it can't speak to the outside world. It can't interact with an API. It can't say, hey, what's the weather today? You have to tell it. That's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because, I don't know why it's a good thing. I don't know why I said that. It's a bad thing because it means you can't, it's very hard to automate things, right? It's very hard to automate these things. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely do some very, very powerful things with it. Whether you can do the prediction market. What about that? Sorry.
I mean, you can use that to incorporate into your.
Yeah, absolutely. You can use, so all of the projects that I put up there, the reason there was a big question mark at the end and it was all very cryptic was because those projects will probably be able to interact with each other, right? Most of the services that people are building on Ethereum aren't just for the use of like a certain set of people, right? They're for the use of everybody. They'll be incredibly useful, like those prediction markets, as you say, could be used to then power betting platforms. They're almost betting platforms in themselves. So yeah, these things are highly interoperable, and they all the fact that they can communicate is incredibly valuable, and that's one of the reasons that the network itself is incredibly valuable and is incredibly interesting, because all these different things can build on top of each other. So yeah, I would say it's probably possible to do what you think you have in your head with Ethereum. Yeah. Yep.
Roughly how many different chain platforms are there coming out of Bitcoin? Are all the platforms much the same?
So the question was roughly how many different chain platforms are there? How many different blockchains? That's a question you have to ask God. I don't know. There are like tons. There's another one every day. The vegan initiative is its own blockchain. It's I don't know. I honestly don't know. Yeah, there are way too many for me to count. Yep.
Ethereum Classic was created after Mark 4.
Yes.
Is it a better platform than Ethereum?
Is it a better So the question was, Ethereum Classic was created after a hard fork. Is it a better platform than Ethereum? I'm not the one to answer that question. I won't tell you what's good or what's bad. Wasn't it the original, the OG? Yeah, so what happened with Ethereum Classic? So this is the Slockit, the company I mentioned earlier, who made this lock thing that you could send a transaction to and open a door. They wanted to raise a bunch of money. What they did was kind of create this kind of crowdfunding contract to raise a bunch of money, realized that, oh, hey, we don't need to be the only ones that use this crowdfunding contract. There could be tons of other companies that want to raise a load of money. Let's build a kind of generic crowdfunding contract that loads of people can apply to for money. So that's what they did. They built this big generic crowdfunding contract. Everyone thought it was going to be the next best thing, and they dumped $180 million into it. Pretty silly, but very exciting. So after $180 million had flowed into this contract, some people realized that it wasn't actually... there were some bugs. There were some things that could go wrong. And, can go wrong, will go wrong. It did. Some guy decided to start draining funds out of this contract. He ended up draining, or she, or they, ended up draining like $30 million or something, a lot of money basically out of this contract into a subcontract. That money was locked in the subcontract for 30 days as per the original smart contract, the $180 million one. And as a result, everyone lost their minds and started running around like, what do we do? This guy's stolen. This is about to steal like $30 million. There were like three options, one of which was to kind of just let the guy get away with all the money and carry on. The other option was to just lock all the funds up, so not let him use it, but also not let anybody else use it. And the third option was fix it, put all the money into like a refund contract, let everybody get their money back, and let's just not do that again. Take it as a lesson. So what ended up happening was the third. It got overwhelming consensus from miners, from the general community, and so that was the one that took place. The Ethereum chain went on to be the chain where the bad guy didn't get the money and the good guys got all their money back, and the Ethereum Classic chain was the chain where the bad guy did get the money and probably profited quite heavily from it. So the reason it hard forked is because the miners chose the new chain. So the miners chose the Ethereum chain, or the now Ethereum chain, and some miners decided that they didn't like that they thought Ethereum, the guy should get the money because all he'd done is exploit a bug that was, that existed in some code. Why is he such a bad guy? I don't know, maybe because he stole $30 million. And they decided that they wanted to continue mining the original chain. So they did. So that's why Ethereum Classic exists. It's just a continuation of that original chain. Yep. Am I able to explain proof of stake? Magic? I don't know. Basically proof of stake is like you chuck a bunch of money in a contract that gets locked up there for a period of time, and you are promised a return on it because you act as a block validator. So by validating blocks, you're essentially fulfilling the role of a miner. Except you're not wasting a ton of electricity to do it. You're just providing your computer so when it's needed, somebody can ask you, hey, what should the next block be? And you tell them, and then they're like, oh, cool, thanks, that's the next block. Here's 8% annual returns. That's basically proof of stake. I have no idea how the algorithms work. As I said, I'm not a crypto nerd. Pretty interesting. If it works, also pretty amazing. It removes the need for proof of work, which is incredibly wasteful. Proof of work takes up as much energy as Slovenia for Bitcoin in a day. So if you're mining Bitcoin, you're contributing to global warming. Not cool. Stop doing it. No, just kidding. But yeah, so proof of stake is good. Hopefully it will happen fairly soon, but who knows. Yep, hello?
Just generally, like, what do you think is the biggest challenge for Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these projects?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the biggest, especially with like, China deciding that ICOs are illegal
Yep.
and crashing the Bitcoin market
Yep,
last
yep.
day, like, everything's so volatile.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, all these projects have like good concepts, good teams behind them. Like, what do you think is stopping all of this from taking off in the next, ever?
Yep. Yeah, so the question was, what's the biggest challenge? Well, it's definitely not money. It's definitely not a shortage of developers. It's scalability. So these things are incredibly slow, like horrendously slow. Bitcoin has a massive backlog most of the time, meaning that if you send a Bitcoin transaction today, it might not get processed for a couple of days. Ethereum, when somebody decides to run an ICO, has a horrific backlog. It can only process like 14 transactions per second, as I say. That's dreadful. If you want to run a Visa network on top of Ethereum, you can't do that right now. It's impossible, right? So these things are currently pretty rubbish in terms of building consumer applications on top of. So that's the biggest challenge, is scalability. There are a few solutions in like theorized and in the works. Proof of stake, just mentioned, would hopefully bring the block time down to something like 4 seconds. So meaning every 4 seconds you could have a new batch of transactions. So it increases the transaction throughput. There's a bunch of others like sharding, which is splitting off the blockchain into loads of mini blockchains. Raiden, or kind of payment channels or state channels, or the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, which is basically only committing what you need to the chain. So passing back signed messages, so still using the principles of cryptography, but only committing the result to the blockchain to actually verify that it all happened. Yeah, so scalability is the number one. If that isn't solved, these things are probably useless. Not useless, but like they have a very, very limited set of use cases. And will basically just be available to the highest bidder. You could create 40 Ethereums, but then everybody has to mine on 40 different networks. It's like it's not going to be sustainable. Yeah, scalability. Yep. Is there a limit on the number of ethers that can be created? Currently, there's a kind of theoretical limit. It's like 118 million or something like that. But in future, like, no, that could be changed. So you could up the number of ethers that could be created, for example. I don't know what the reason is. There's some complex economic reason. I don't know what it is. But yeah, for Bitcoin, it's like 21 million. For Ethereum, it's 118 million theoretical, but it could be changed. Was there one more? Yep.
Yeah. So within there's patch releases of the software, right? So
Right.
When you release a patch, do you have to upload the whole thing again, or?
Yes. So if you, for example, want to create a program that is upgradable, what you would generally do is have like a proxy, right? So you'd have something that sits at the front. You would create a contract. You would tell your front end contract which back end contract to point at. Does that make sense? So for example, I would deploy a program. I would deploy one set of back end logic and one kind of front end proxy. And every time a user wanted to use that back end logic, they would ask the proxy, hey, which version should I use? And you could, for example, do it that way. You could update just which version you were using. Does that make sense?
No, the back end is on the blockchain.
Yes.
So then you're still having to trust the front end.
The front end would also be on the blockchain, sorry. So it would be like a front end contract. So you would have a back end blockchain contract and a front end blockchain contract, which is basically just a proxy. It's a resolver, right? It tells you which contract to use. It still sits on the blockchain.
Sure, but the resolver is not the big, it's very big, sure. So
No, the resolver can be incredibly small.
yeah, so you still have to keep deploying.
Yes.
Theoretically, what's the code?
Yes. Yes. So generally, smart contracts aren't actually too large. There's a limit to how large you can make them. There's a limit to how complex they can be. That will probably change over time again. But yeah, they can't actually be incredibly huge. So if, for example, you're thinking, oh, these smart contracts, maybe I'll need to write 20,000 lines of code, not going to happen. Generally, smart contracts stay within kind of 500 lines of code. They're fairly simplistic in terms of what they actually do. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? We can speak afterwards. Yep. Was there any more? Otherwise, I will get onto the demo. Sorry, I'm not looking at you right now. Yep.
So Bitcoin and Litecoin are very much digital currency.
Yes.
But Ethereum is kind of a currency and a platform.
Yes.
Do you see it becoming just one of those, like a platform?
No.
Are they coming in the future or both?
I don't see why any reason that it couldn't continue to be both. Sorry, the question was, Bitcoin, currencies like Bitcoin, Litecoin are just currencies. Ethereum is a currency and a platform. Is there any reason why it would just be one further down the line, or will it continue to be both? I think it will be both. It works as a currency. You can store value in it, albeit, in a very volatile way. Don't do it. But you can do it, and if you can do it, people will do it, right? It's the same thing with the DAO. I don't think there will be any reason that it wouldn't be used as a currency. I seem to have lost my slides. Technologically inept. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right, so we'll move on to a demo, and we'll all get to look at some smart contracts. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a simple escrow service. So escrow, for those of you who may not know, or even those of you who do know, is like mutual payment protection, right? So in the traditional world, if I want to use escrow, I go to probably a lawyer and I say, hey, I need to use you as escrow. Can you help me while I'm transacting with this other party? The lawyer will say, yep. Then I'll give my money to the lawyer. They'll get whatever it is that I want from the other party, and then they'll do the switch and give me the money, much like a drug dealer in cool movies. So we're going to make something like that. We're going to make an escrow service which basically holds the funds in a smart contract and releases them only when we tell it to release them. It's incredibly simple. There's not going to be any dispute resolution, not going to be any complex mechanics behind how this thing works, no incentives or anything like that. This is going to be very, very simple to get across the concept of a smart contract and what it can do regarding money and value and things like that. Yes, so programs on Ethereum are known as smart contracts. Hopefully we all know that by now. So creating the escrow contract. Ethereum's programming language, or the one that's mainly used right now, is called Solidity. There are a couple of others, Viper and LLL. But nobody really uses those, so we're going to use Solidity. I will briefly explain how things work. I'll try not to dwell too long on the code. I'm aware that not everybody likes looking at code. And developer tools for Ethereum are still in very early stages, so please go easy. This thing will probably look like it's a nightmare, and that's because it is. But we'll get there, I promise. So let me share my screen. All right. Oh, let me turn Flux off. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Can you see this at the back? Can you read that? Yes, fantastic. All right, so this is a really, really simple escrow contract in its entirety. I can fit it all on the screen. It's amazing. So yeah, as you can see, it's less than 30 lines long, and this will do all the things that we our requirements that we set out earlier. So first of all, we tell Ethereum that we want to deploy a contract. We store the address of the seller, so whoever is going to be our seller in this transaction. Can you guys see over there, by the way? Yeah, cool. We have a bunch of events to tell the outside world what's going on. And we have kind of a list of buyers. So this contract could potentially be used for multiple buyers and a single seller. We're just going to have one buyer. But yeah, so this function here, right here, is called the constructor. It will run once, and it will run when the contract is deployed, right? So that one time it will run is when the contract is deployed, and it will never run again. So what we're doing here is we're setting the seller variable that we made up here to be the message.sender, which is equal to the person who deployed the contract, right? It's the Ethereum public address of the person who deployed this contract. So anybody could do it. And then we have a function down here called buy. That function is payable, which means we can send it some ether. We can send some ether to that function. What it does is it logs the fact that somebody has bought something. So it just uses one of these events here to tell the outside world that something has been purchased. And then it stores the amount that we've sent to it, this message.value, inside this list of buyers that we have. So again, that's just kind of keyed by the public address of whoever has purchased this thing, whatever it is we're buying. And then down here, the last function we have is release. So this is when the buyer is happy with whatever they've received or the service that they've been provided, and then they want to release the funds to the seller and say, hey, you've done a good job, here's the money I promised you. So that's what this does. It just sends the money to the seller, and that's it, and then logs an event. So really, really simple, right? But the concept I'm trying to get across is once you put money in this contract, there is nothing coded in here which lets you get it out. Nothing, apart from this release function, right? If I send money to this contract through this buy function, I can't withdraw it. It's there, it's locked up, it's done. All I can do is call this release function, that's it. So that's the kind of concept. I can't change this function, I can't edit it and make a new version, right? Once I've sent money to that contract, that's it, I'm locked in. So that's why these things are pretty powerful, and that's why the DAO was a really, really big mess. So let's deploy this thing. So deploy, and we're going to put it on the network. We're going to call it escrow, and we're going to deploy it from the account called Mark. So I've named my accounts for ease. So we're going to deploy it from this account. You can see down here we have the bytecode, and we have like the interface. So if you make a program that wants to interact with this Ethereum contract, you need the interface to tell your program, what methods to use and stuff like that, but we don't need that today. So let's sign this transaction and wait for it to be broadcasted to the network. So that hopefully won't take too long. Yep, there we go. So we've deployed the contract. So if we go to the contract itself, no, we're not going to do that. Contracts, escrow. Right? So now we have the contract. It has a unique address on the Ethereum network, so this address is unique to this contract. We're on a test network, I'm not paying for any of this. So that's unique, so if you look up this address, you will only find this contract forever and ever and ever. And down here, we can interact with it if we want to. So we're going to execute that buy function. We're going to switch across our accounts. We're going to be Jeremy. If anyone's watched Peep Show, that's a reference. And we're going to buy something. So we're going to purchase something for 0.1 ether. And we're going to post that transaction. So again, we're going to assign the transaction, and it's going to be mined. So now we're executing this buy function. We're committing to send money to this contract, and we're committing to following the rules regarding, getting money back out of it. All I can do is release the money, right? So if we go to the escrow contract again, we're actually already here, you can see that the purchase has been logged. The reason that amount is so huge is because the Ethereum network only deals in like the smallest unit, and the smallest unit of ether is like 1 times 10 to the 18. So 0.1 is 1 with still quite a lot of zeros. So we've locked money in that contract, right? This contract now has 0.1 ether locked inside it. And there's nothing I can do to get it out apart from calling the release function. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm kind of happy with what Mark's provided me. The bike works, and I'm going to send him the money like I promised. So let's call release. And let's not say our password out loud. So that transaction is also going to be mined. And we should see here, we can see that the release has been logged, and I should have made a note of the balances of each of the accounts before that, but Mark's balance will have gone up by 0.1 ether. If I refresh this, it should actually just be displaying 0 here, but I don't know why. If we go to Mark, his balance has actually increased by 0.1 since we started this. So that's a really kind of simple contract. Hopefully I kind of explained the code and how things work. It's not really necessary knowing how to interact with all these things, but I kind of wanted you to get to understand like the process and to get to grips with how the code works. So, where were we? The slides. Honestly, every time I put the screen back, my slides just disappear. I don't know where they go. Let's bring them back. No. There we go. Sorry. Yes, so, a quick recap. The seller deploys the contract. So the seller is saying, hey, here's a contract. If anybody wants to buy anything from me, you have to agree to this contract. Easy enough. After that point, all the code is immutable. It cannot be edited at all, ever. The buyer chooses to enter into the contract. So, it was my free will to go and enter the buy function to kind of join and to send money to that contract. Nobody forced me to do it. And after I did that, I no longer controlled the funds. The funds were controlled by the code. The code had full control of the funds. If I hadn't coded in a release mechanism, the funds would be locked in the contract forever, and nobody could get them out. And the buyer must tell the code to release the funds. So the buyer isn't kind of sending the funds to the seller. The buyer is telling the code that they want the code to send the funds to the seller. Right? It's a very important concept. And the funds can go nowhere other than was specified in the contract, which was to the seller. Right? They couldn't have gone back to me. There's no way I could change that argument. They could only go to that seller that had been specified already. So yeah, as I say, the key point, that's why I've said it over and over again, is immutability, the fact that it cannot be changed once it gets there. Yeah, so that's pretty much all. I'll kind of open it up again for another 10 minutes for Q&A, and then if you want to speak to me, I'll probably head back to the Blockchain Center for a little while. I won't stick around too long because I'm sick. I don't want to go home. But come and speak to me, and definitely email me if you're interested. Yes, at the back there.
So that smart contract.
Yes.
What's the difference between that and saving like 0.1 ether from the carrying wallet to say something's Jack's wallet, or is that technically the same thing?
So the question was, what's the difference between sending money to a smart contract and somebody else's wallet? The difference is there pretty much isn't one. So a wallet has an address in exactly the same format as a contract. So when you deploy a contract, it receives an address in exactly the same format as somebody else's wallet. Contracts have to be told that they can receive Ether. So you can't just put a contract on the network and tell somebody to send Ether to it. Or you can't just send Ether to any old contract. You actually have to program into the contract the fact that it can accept Ether, which is a good thing because it stops people making mistakes. But yeah, there's not really any difference. Yeah, so any more? Yep.
Why is Ethereum a lot more popular among corporations and banks?
Why is Ethereum more popular among corporations and banks? Probably because there's just so much you can do with it. It's incredibly versatile, right? I wrote a program to run on Ethereum just then, right? I could have written anything at all, but I wrote something that just handles funds for a demo purpose, right? But that concept of all those different mechanics are incredibly powerful, right? And all that, the state can be verified by absolutely everybody. The whole network is validating that the payments went, that the transactions went through, they were valid. It's an incredibly versatile platform, which is why it's probably valued so much. I feel like I'm getting hounded off stage. Yeah, if you guys want to come and chat, I'll be in the Blockchain Center for probably 30 minutes to an hour. Come along, say hello. I won't shake your hand because I'm sick. But yeah, cool. Thanks.
Okay, great. Hi everyone. Good evening. My name is David Moskowitz. I am the CEO and co-founder of Indorse. We came down from Singapore a couple of days ago to meet you all, meet the community here in Melbourne. Really fantastic turnout. So up in Singapore, we have a similar turnout, actually. We tend to punch above our weight as well. We have around 200 people come up to our events too, even though we have a relatively small population. So it's really good to see such a great turnout. Perhaps we can offer some sort of sister program with Melbourne where we could swap speakers and swap attendees and swap events. That would be a lot of fun. So anyway, today I'm going to be presenting our project called Indorse. Just out of curiosity, in the room, have any of you heard about Indorse before? Okay, a few? Great. And how many of you own cryptocurrency? Awesome. Okay. So again, my name is David Moskowitz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Indorse. This is my, I guess, third project in the blockchain space. First one was something called Coin Republic, where I did Bitcoin brokering from 2013 until 2015 up in Singapore. I sold that company in 2015, which is when I met my co-founder, Goreng. So in addition to the blockchain space or blockchain enterprises or entrepreneurship, I'm also a co-organizer of the Bitcoin meetup and also a board member of Access, which is the local cryptocurrency and blockchain association. So I'm happy to talk about any of that if you want to talk about Singapore, blockchain in Singapore, or anything like that. My awesome co-founder, Goreng, holds a master's from Singapore Management University in Information Systems. He's also the co-organizer of the Ethereum meetup in Singapore. So if you're interested in doing an event in Singapore, you should definitely talk to him about it, and he can help organize it. He's also one of the founding members of the Kovan testnet. If you guys are familiar with mainnet and testnet in testing software, so he helped develop the testnet version of Ethereum using something called a proof of authority chain. And we're also using that proof of authority chain for one of our other projects. So we have a pretty good team of developers as well as people with a lot of business experience. I'll move on fairly quickly just in the interest of time. If I can move on here. There we go. Also have a really good group of advisors. I think many of you will know some of these names. For example, Lloyd Liu, who is currently on the Kyber network. Everyone heard of Kyber? Very popular service coming out right now in an ICO. Also, Matt Tan from Etherscan. If you use Ethereum, you're checking your transactions on Etherscan. So really great advisor. And of course, Benedict Chan from BitGo. If you're holding any sort of substantial amount of Bitcoin and it isn't in cold storage, it's most likely on the BitGo system. So I'm just going to play a very quick video if I can here. Let me see. Might be a problem here if I can't get online. Yeah, thank you. It's on the other side here. Oh, getting not found here. Ah, brilliant. Oh. No? Crank it up. All right, I'll do it off the mic then. So the reason that I'm showing that video is to kind of explain how we came to the project Indorse. So in that video, first off, I talked about Ethereum at a price of about $170, which we'll see what happens with China and whether or not it goes back down to that point anytime soon. How many of you have been in the blockchain, Bitcoin, for any period of time over, let's say, 3 years? 3 years. You remember the old Bitcoin ban in China a few years ago? A little bit reminiscent, perhaps? Okay. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, the point of the video was we have a pilot ongoing with Nian Polytechnic to issue digital certificates or digital diplomas on the blockchain. And through this pilot program, what they asked us to do was to take these digital diplomas and push them onto social networks. So we were asked to enable students to be able to put information on their certificate or the link to their certificate into LinkedIn and other social media platforms. And we started to really think about this process of giving all this information over to these third parties, to these corporations, to these providers of networks and social media platforms. And knowing what we know about blockchain technology, knowing what we know about tokenization, the issuance of tokens, knowing what we know about us as people in this industry and our feelings towards owning our own data, as well as the possibility to be rewarded for sharing that data, we thought that there was a brand new way that we could start thinking about these networks. And that's how we came up with the idea for Indorse. So the three things, or the three problems that we're really trying to solve with Indorse is we want to give back ownership of the data to the user. They should be able to turn on, turn off their sharing of data. And if they do share the data, we want you to get rewarded for that sharing. We want you to own a part of that network in a way, right? Let me ask you, how many people here use LinkedIn? Quite a few. So LinkedIn earned between $2 to $4 billion a year. Let me ask you, did any of you get any of that revenue? No. Nothing. How about when they got sold to Microsoft? You did. Oh, you work for LinkedIn. So what person did? How about when they sold off to Microsoft for $26 billion? Nope, nobody. Okay, so we think that using tokens, that offering tokens as a proxy for utility on the platform can enable the users who are helping to build that platform by providing their content, providing their data, providing the network effect that we're all building when we work together to build this platform, and give it back to you. Give you a reasonable chance to grow with this network, right? So we wanted to enable the monetization of data. The third thing is we know that we're moving into a skills economy, right? So I know many people here are learning Solidity, you're learning how to program smart contracts. These are not necessarily things which are being taught in universities yet, although obviously we are very much in favor of digital certificates, digital diplomas being put on the blockchain. We also started to think about how can we go beyond that? How can we go into skills which you're learning outside of these institutions? How can we provide a mechanism to validate these skills in a way that you don't need that central authority anymore to put their stamp of approval on it? So again, that's how we came up with the idea of Indorse. So let me take you through a user on the platform, kind of the user experience as we know it. So this is Alice here. She's a new user to the platform. When she signs up, it doesn't cost her anything to sign up. And this is also one of the brilliant things that I really love about the platform. We have the opportunity to bring in 1 million people into cryptocurrency because it doesn't cost them anything to get onto the platform and start earning cryptocurrencies, to start earning tokens. So Alice comes on the platform, she's given a minimum reputation on the platform, and she's now able to create a profile and start posting her skills. So in this case, she is going to post the fact that she can code in JavaScript. So the system will then automatically ask her to post some proof element. So she posts her GitHub repository or other proof element. And the system automatically then checks or asks a number of different members of the platform to validate that claim. So we're using anonymous voting in order to prevent people from knowing what the other voters on the platform are doing because we don't want the vote skewed. We're using a random source of entropy, using block headers as well as Oracleize. For those of you who are interested in the technology behind it, can have Garang talk about it in a minute, and something called ZK proofs to do this anonymous voting. So that's the choosing of the other endorsers of the skills. So this is Bob here. He has been chosen to endorse. You can see here that he has a quite high reputation, score of about 10, and he's earned some rewards on the platform already. So Bob goes and he checks the GitHub repository and he decides whether or not that statement is true, along with some of the other endorsers on the platform. And what we're working for with this is a consensus. So you heard earlier about consensus mechanism in Bitcoin and Ethereum, where you need a majority of people to agree that a block is valid. In this case, we're getting a majority of people to agree that a claim is valid. So once enough people have voted that it's true, we have a validated claim, and Alice's reputation score increases, as well as the other voters who voted in the same manner in the consensus also increases, and they also earn a reward from the platform. So that reward is not a cryptocurrency, it's not a token yet, it's an internal accounting system. So we're keeping track of the amounts of rewards that people are earning, and over a period of time, that gets vested or changed over into the token. So now this token is advertising on the platform. So advertisers go and they buy the Indorse token, the IND token, and they use it to buy advertising on the platform, because these people are these members who put up this information about themselves, about this skill. This is actually incredibly valuable. So your profile on LinkedIn is far more valuable than your profile on Facebook, for example, because it has specific skills that you're able to. This has a lot of value to people in HR and recruitment and companies looking to target you. And it's fine. That's perfectly okay for companies to be targeting you for solicitation, for advertisement. But if that's going to happen, we think that the user should be rewarded for this, okay? I know I occasionally get these random emails from people trying to recruit me. Other people have gotten similar ones. I think you should be getting rewarded for that intrusion. So we can do that using tokens. So I don't know if we have time to show a video. This is our application, our proof of concept for the application for the voting mechanism. You can go online and see that over on YouTube. We have that available. And I'll invite my co-founder Garang up actually to talk a little bit more about the technology behind Indorse.
Hey guys. I'm Gaurang. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Indorse. David explained Indorse in a very good manner. Now I'm going to talk more about the technology behind it. In Indorse, we are going to integrate with a lot of other existing blockchain applications or platforms. So to begin with, we'll be integrating with Uport. Uport is used for identifying the people who are signing up on the platform. Now, one of the basic questions that we got, so when we started Indorse, we got this question a lot. People are like, what happens when somebody signs up and starts getting rewards? How do you identify this person? What if the same person can create multiple accounts? So to solve this question, we are using Uport and Civic as well. So with Uport, it ties your Ethereum address with your real-world identity, with your phone number. So obviously you can go and get multiple SIM cards or multiple numbers, but it reduces the fraud issue, or essentially what is called as a Sybil attack, to a large extent. So we are going to use Uport and Civic for that. We are going to use Stratis for in-platform messaging. As a techie, I envision a future which is completely serverless and completely decentralized. And to achieve this vision, we obviously need to integrate with other platforms, and that's why we are using Stratis, which does messaging completely on the blockchain, and Whisper and Swarm and all these technologies. IPFS is the place where I'm going to store my data, all the file systems and everything, again in a decentralized manner, and Ethereum is going to be the compute engine. This is a very high level architecture. As I said, IPFS and Ethereum are the base layers, base technologies on which it is going to be built. I might be using BigChain DB as well for storing data, which is similar to MongoDB, like a NoSQL database. Above that, we'll have an indexing and file system along with the smart contracts. So currently our token sale is going on, and that token itself is a smart contract, which is again based on Ethereum. Along with that, we have one more internal token called a score token, which is essentially your reputation system. And again, the IPFS needs some file system indexing and all those things. So see, with Indorse, what I envision again is like a reputation system itself. So we look at Indorse as a platform on which multiple other things can be built, or it can be integrated with multiple other platforms. So essentially, the decentralized LinkedIn or decentralized version of a professional network is only the first application that I envision. This layer will be open source. It will be available to all the people, and you can go ahead and build any of your other awesome dApps on it. Above that, obviously, I'll have an API layer. So people who are not really familiar with blockchain or other decentralized applications, they can directly call this API, which is a REST API, and start building on top of that. And as I said, there are other layers, web application, mobile application, or...
Are you able to give him the microphone?
So I think this might be a little too much for people who don't know anything about Ethereum, but John Nash earlier explained Ethereum in a beautiful way. Now I'm going into a little bit more detail, something called a zero knowledge proof. This actually seems like moon math, as in a zero knowledge proof is a way to prove that you know something without actually revealing it. Just take a real life example. How many of you know what is find Waldo? Which you have to find a man in all the sea of men, or Sudoku. So in case of Sudoku, if I solve a Sudoku puzzle and I want to prove to David that hey, I have actually solved this puzzle without actually revealing the answer, you can use zero knowledge proofs for doing that. I won't go into much details in this case, but that's the basic idea. Again, as David mentioned briefly earlier, the voting system or the endorsement system is anonymous in nature. Why is it anonymous? That's because there are two issues. So when you have multiple people voting on a certain fact or a certain issue, there are two problems with this. One is the adaptive problem, and second is the abortive problem. So if there are 10 people, so if I put up a question, is David a good presenter? Yeah. And so now see, what happens is when you say yes, other people get influenced by your yes.
Especially enthusiastic.
Yeah. and they might be forced to say that, hey, David is actually a good speaker because this guy says it. And then if 9 people say that David is a good speaker, the 10th guy feels obliged to say that because he thinks, oh, 9 people think it, so it must be true. But if it's anonymous, in this case, then the 10th guy doesn't know that 9 people have said yes. So he is more likely to give an honest answer. And second is again the abortive issue. Again, the 10th guy, if he thinks that David is not a good speaker, but 9 people have said yes, he might not even vote on it because he will think, hey, my vote doesn't matter. It won't count because I'm saying no and 9 people are saying yes, so it doesn't matter. So to solve these issues, it needs to be anonymous. And why randomized? Again, this is one of the interesting questions I got in Europe as well. So I was presenting about Europe in Barcelona. Somebody asked me, like, why is your system randomized? Because you normally think that only people who know you can endorse you for certain things. But in this case, I want the endorsements to be objective enough, or the claims to be objective enough such that people who don't know me can endorse me. Now, many of you who don't know David, they don't know me, but you can look at David's video on CNBC and say that David is actually a good speaker. So you don't need to know him personally to say yes to that. And again, I know David. If I say that, hey David, can I write good code? He will say yes because he likes me. And you know, I do that on LinkedIn as well. Sometimes LinkedIn keeps showing me, hey, do you want to endorse this person? If I like the person, I say yes. If I don't like him, I say no sometimes. Just out of spite. I don't do that actually. But yeah, that happens. So again, it is very difficult to get actual randomness on blockchain. So there are currently two ways, or there might be more in the future. We can use the block headers for this, or Oracleize is another company which is providing something called a randomized data source, and these two are really awesome solutions for that. So again, let me go into a little bit of detail about the endorsement protocol itself. In the first phase, when Alice makes a claim that she can write JavaScript code, the system will go ahead and send this claim for endorsements to random people on the platform. Suppose it will send it out to 10 people. Out of those 10 people, all of them are requested to register for voting on this. Say out of 10, only 6 of them register. Then it will send another set of requests to another 10 people, because we need at least 10 people participating in this. And when 10 people register, it goes in the second phase, which is called a voting phase. All of this is done anonymously, completely on the blockchain, using smart contracts and zero knowledge proofs. So people who register for voting, nobody knows who they are, because their public keys and all those things are encrypted, and they participate in that using zero knowledge proofs. And again, when they vote on it in the voting phase, yes or no, that vote is also encrypted. Now this seems like magic. How can you tally votes which are encrypted without even decrypting it? So that's the magic in the algorithm which goes on in the blockchain. So you can read more about the algorithm on the website. It's been developed by one of our advisors called Patrick McCorry, who works at UCL London, and I'm extrapolating that for anonymous endorsement protocol. I'll skip this. Yeah, I'll skip this as well. Yeah, just quickly glance through the two tokens that we have. One is the IND token. This is being issued in the token sale currently. It is an ERC20 compatible token. What that means is it follows a standard protocol such that it can be transferred for other tokens and given out freely on the Ethereum network. And the other token is called SCR token, which is the reputation system. So as I said, I look at Indorse as a platform. Why does the reputation need to be an ERC20 token? Now imagine if you know my Ethereum address and you go to Etherscan, you put my address and you can directly see my score on Etherscan. That would be really awesome, because that would show you that I can actually write smart contracts. I can write JavaScript code, I can write Node.js, I can write Java, I can write Python. And I think that's a pretty powerful concept in itself. This can be used in multiple other scenarios. If I go on a freelancing website like freelancer.com or Upwork or anything else, even Ithlance, you can directly use the score on Indorse for validating this person's skills. And I think that's really powerful. In the token sale currently we are issuing IND tokens and SCR tokens as well. Yeah, David would speak more about the use cases now.
Yeah, so actually today, I don't know if it's public yet, maybe I'm speaking a little bit early, but we're going to announce a partnership with a company called BitJobs, which is a jobs marketplace for students and employers. So we're going to be integrating our platform with their platform so that we can cross-share as employers. Oh, thank you. As employers complete their work assignments with the employees, we're going to be taking that information, and that's going to become one of the claims or one of the proof elements to the claim of the student's profile on the Indorse platform, and therefore be able to also link that back to the BitJobs platform and show employers what the skills are of the students. So that's one of several partnerships that we're currently working on. So it has a number of applications, and we actually see this as complementary to identification protocols. So we often hear about KYC or know your customer things where you have to show identity. We're not providing a identity in the sense of your national identity. What we're providing is identity in as far as your professional career. So what we're enabling you to do is to upload or to create almost like a digital backpack or a digital wallet for your professional career that you are the owner for, and you're able to earn rewards for sharing this as well. So this has applications in a whole bunch of different areas. Just talk a little bit about the differences between the protocol layer and the use case. As Gaurang mentioned, what we are building is a protocol layer that these other use cases can go on top of. And the first use case that we as a company are focusing on is like a decentralized LinkedIn or a decentralized network for professionals. So these are the different types of parts to that, or different modules to that. And on the left side, we have the actual protocol layer that will enable all these things on the right. So that is it for us. We are Indorse. We do currently have a token sale in progress until Thursday is the last day of it when it closes. If you wish to participate, please use the ENS, which is the Ethereum name service. Please use indorse.eth. We do not give a long string of characters that you might have seen before. The contract address, that's very dangerous to hand out. People tend to get scammed because other people post fake ones. So we are using the ENS or Ethereum name service called indorse.eth. Also, always be careful to only go to indorse.io. That is our official website. Again, people post fake websites. You need to be very careful about sending tokens or sending Ether to addresses which are not validated or verified. Don't say tokens. Sending your Ether. You can send tokens too sometimes, but not to this address. So anyway, so we are big fans of the Ethereum name service. It's kind of like a domain name system where it matches a very easy to understand name with that long string of characters, so you don't have to remember that anymore. So please, everyone, please start using this. This is compatible with my Ether wallet and a couple of other MetaMask as well now. We have to do some more testing on that. But yeah, so My Ether wallet is definitely the recommended one at this point. Although you do need to be careful. Again, please go to only the My Ether wallet address because there's a lot of scams out there posting fake addresses. Unfortunately, I have to fly out in a little bit, but Gaurang is going to be around for a bit tonight as well as tomorrow if you have any questions. And you can always contact us as well. I'm David at indorse.io and Gaurang at indorse.io. Thank you very much.
So, Monero, yep. Secure, private, and untraceable. Everything people thought Bitcoin was, Monero is. Monero is the coin for people who value privacy. I'm Chris McCabe, and this is Key Jeffries, and we are building an educational website on cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and tonight we're going to talk to you about Monero. As Monero's motto suggests, it has three features that make it different to other cryptocurrencies. Security. Using cryptocurrencies, you are your own bank, and you're responsible for your own financial security. There is an obvious security hole in most cryptocurrencies, which allow anyone you engage in a transaction with to see your entire account balance and transaction history. For example, with Bitcoin, this information is available on a public ledger. Monero is different. No one can see how much money you have or how much money you've spent unless you choose to share that information. Privacy. Many cryptocurrencies track and store your metadata to be used for advertisement purposes and passive surveillance. Here we go. Privacy. Privacy. Many cryptocurrencies track and store. Cool. Awkward. Untraceability. This is important to Monero. This is important with Monero. Oh, wow. I'm not a good public speaker, everybody, so get comfortable about this one. I feel like untraceable. If a cryptocurrency is going to mimic cash, it needs to be untraceable. You can have a currency that is private and secure, but as long as the transaction history is publicly linked to your wallet, there is a risk of being identified. Monero offers complete anonymity. Even though Monero offers security, privacy, and anonymity, it doesn't mean that it's only good for criminal acts. Around the world, there are people suffering from oppressive regimes, where their assets can be frozen by the government at the drop of a hat. If you wanted to buy something without your government knowing, being denim jeans in North Korea or a Kinder Surprise in America, Monero exists. Closer to home, Monero is the best cryptocurrency to use when you want to protect your financial position and leverage power. Imagine you run a cafe in Melbourne and you're negotiating a sales price with a new supplier of coffee beans. If you use Bitcoin for this purchase, the supplier might be able to see all of your previous transactions you've made. They could also know how much money was in your wallet. Your negotiating power would vanish. This wouldn't happen with Monero. Only you know what's in your account. Unlike many coins hitting the market today, Monero didn't have a multi-million-dollar ICO funded by investors. It wasn't a fork off Bitcoin, riding celebrity status like Bitcoin Cash. Monero grew organically, over time with a strong community support. Development ideas are put forward and funded by the community. Usage growth is an actual metric for Monero's success. And based on recent growth, it is clear that there is a real desire for a currency that is secure, private, and untraceable.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. Okay, so Chris talked a lot about kind of the vision of Monero. I'm going to talk more about the technical side of Monero. So the main solution to these problems we have with privacy, the three things we have is stealth addresses, ring signatures, and ring CT, and they each handle a small part of the Monero network. So stealth addresses, they hide the recipient of the transaction. Ring signatures, they hide the sender of the transaction. And ring CT actually hides the amount of the transaction. So next slide. Awesome. So this is actually a Bitcoin transaction. It's cut off a bit here, but you can actually see the sender address over here. That's their address, the public address. This could be an exchange potentially, and they're obviously going to have all of your information. So they're able to link that sent address to the receiver address, which might be your address. So they're able to say this address definitely belongs to Key Jeffries because we know, because we had his ID here. And we can also see this guy's obviously doing pretty well off, 272 Bitcoin. So we'll jump to the next slide. Okay, so how does Monero do things differently? Basically, when Alice wants to send 5 Monero to someone, she sends it to a stealth address first. When she sends it to the stealth address, it's a randomly generated stealth address, and it happens automatically. You don't have to do anything for this to happen. It's just built into the network. Bob takes out his wallet, he scans the blockchain, and only he can see that stealth address. No one else can see that, and he knows that someone has sent him 5 Monero. He doesn't actually know that it's Alice that sent him that, but Alice can prove it, and I'll show you that in the next slide. So ring signatures, so that protects Bob. But how do we protect Alice? Alice has still sent money to this stealth address, and we still know that that's happening. Basically what Monero does is it uses a system of plausible deniability. So it doesn't just look like the transaction came from Alice, it looks like it came from Chris, it looks like it came from Key, it looks like it came from Grant, it looks like it came from Jimmy. And it could potentially be any of those ones. So if Alice gets probed by law enforcement, she can just say, oh, it was Grant that said that transaction. There's nothing to prove that she was the one that did that. Except if she gives her private view key over, there's a key image attached to every of these. And this actually is the part that tells you whether that transaction truly happened. So she can prove it if she wants to, but that's up to her. So the third part is ring CT, and this is the part that actually hides the amount. So when I said before that Alice was sending 5 XMR, you actually cannot see that Alice is sending that Monero. I'm not going to go into the cryptography because it's quite intense when we talk about ring CT, but if you do want to find out about it, look up commitments and range proofs, and you'll kind of get into it and get some of the ideas that it uses to protect the transactions amounts. Okay, so some of the technical aspects to it. So it's a proof of work coin. That means miners mine it to include transactions in blocks. It's got an infinite supply. So you can see Bitcoin has a halvening each kind of 10 years or so. So we had a block reward of 50. Now it's down to a block reward of 25, and it'll be 12.5 soon. And you can actually see as it tails out here, Bitcoin doesn't actually have a block reward at the end, in the end days. It means that the miners don't really have a reason to mine to put the transactions in there. What Monero actually does is that forever, infinitely, we have a 0.3 Monero reward. So we're always providing a reward for someone to include a transaction in a block. So next slide. Yeah. So technical. There's been a huge debate recently about SegWit and the block size and how many transactions we can fit in that. Monero kind of does things a bit differently. We have a dynamically scaling block, which basically means that at the start of this year, when Monero use was a bit lower, we saw the block size being a bit lower as well. And as you can see, as Monero has been used more and more, you can see the block size actually expanding to include the transactions. This kind of really huge bump is here where it got included on a Korean exchange and the price went up a lot. So there are some problems with the scaling. It doesn't happen fast enough at the moment, but the Monero community is working on that, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. Okay, so community. Monero really punches above its weight in terms of its community. So you can see on the top there's a Reddit subscriber graph, and you can see how much the subscribers are just like kind of taking off at the moment within the last year or so. And you can also see this is a website called CoinGecko, and you can actually look at the contributors and the development community that's around a coin. So you can see Ethereum has 128 contributors that have contributed to that actual source code. And you can see Ethereum's got $31 billion market cap, and you can see with Monero it's much lower, but we've still got a similar amount of contributors at 120. So it's really punching above its weight. We'll go to the next one. Okay, the other thing with Monero is it has a forum funding system. So this is how projects get completed in Monero. We have people that ask for funding. So there's a mathematician at the moment asking for a bit of funding to work on some ways to reduce the transaction sizes. They post it up, yep, and you can see there they've requested 473 Monero. The community donates to that, and then they'll get funded and they can do what they want with that money. And you'll see their proposal down here. And yeah, this is one of the bigger fundings we've had. So it's 7,000 Monero, which is about, well, it could be tomorrow or today, you know, depending on when you ask me, it could be 600, it could be $500,000. And this is to implement a system called Covery, which basically hides IPs. When you send a transaction from your wallet, it goes to a node, and they will kind of take notice of your IP. And Covery is a system that's working on kind of like breaking that up and not taking IP addresses from the people who send their transactions. Cool. So some other privacy coins. I'm sure you've heard of some of these. Dash, PivX. They're both working on CoinJoin protocols, so they're like an advanced kind of Bitcoin Tumblr. They do it all decentralized, but yeah, those ones, there's been a couple of papers that have come out recently which have kind of said that you can track these Dash and PivX the way that they mix coins. Zero coin protocol, so Zcash, Zcoin, and Ethereum, they all use kind of ZK snarks, and we had people, the people from Indorse talking about zero knowledge proofs and that system. If you want to look into it, it gets pretty intense in terms of cryptography, but that's the system they're using. It's quite computationally expensive to do ZK snark transactions, and that's one of the reasons Monero like kind of stands out, because we don't have to use all of that processing power to make sure we're proving things. And then we have the IP address hiding coins like Verge or Cloak. Basically, they do what Monero is proposing to do. They just, when you send a transaction up to the network, they don't monitor your IP address, basically. So this is a famous painting, and we can see that I've blacked out a certain amount of the painting, but you still know what the painting is. And this is to illustrate what happens when you have a coin that has a certain amount of private transactions. So Dash actually has private transactions, but it's only 5% of its network. So you're having these private transactions in this little black box here, but with all of the data surrounding that little black box, you can kind of get an understanding of what's happening inside the black box. So everyone knows this is the Mona Lisa, even though I've blacked out a certain amount of it. And that's what you've got to be careful when you're looking at investing in different privacy coins. Make sure the privacy is mandatory. You wouldn't be able to tell what this was if it was all black, you know. But you know, if I have a certain amount, you can tell. So Monero challenges. We want to be honest and tell you some of the things that are going on with Monero. And just to be clear, we're not from Monero as well. We're just community members, and we like talking about the coin. So yeah, we're shilling the coin. So right now, Monero has no mobile wallet, and that's a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people. A lot of people like to be able to get a mobile wallet and just do transactions on the fly. That's being developed, and hopefully in the next couple of months, there'll be a mobile wallet. It's a huge transaction size. It's about 30 times the size of Bitcoin, and that's just because when I showed you all of that stuff before with the faking of the transactions, like it looks like it's coming from Alice, but it also looks like it's coming from Bob, and it could be coming from me as well. That adds an extra part to the transaction, and it can get quite large. User friendliness. Monero was only command line only for I think 3 years before it even had a graphical interface. So like the developers are the ones that have really been pushing this, and we've only just kind of started to broaden out. And government regulation and code vulnerabilities, there'll always be things with any cryptocurrency that can happen. You saw with not Ethereum itself, but the DAO that had a code bug in it, and there was $150 million lost. All right. This is my last slide. This is a paper that recently came out a couple of months ago. It's by some reputable universities, and basically they found a flaw in Monero. The flaw was that people were sending transactions basically through the ClearNet. So you could actually send a transaction with 0 ring signatures. So instead of looking like it just came from Key or Chris, it actually just looked like it came from me and it went directly to another person. And about 60% of the transactions were happening that way. Basically what these university researchers were able to do was use that public information and derive the private transactions that were happening in the Monero network from that. And that's something that Monero has just fixed recently. We've just enforced everyone to go to a certain ring size of, the 5 is the lowest. So this is if you go to the desktop wallet, you can't set your ring size below 5. So it always looks like the transaction could potentially be coming from 5 people. All right, awesome. That's basically the end of my talk. If anyone wants to come and ask a question, I've got some Monero stickers here. So I encourage you to come here, and if you ask a question, I'll give you a Monero sticker.
Yeah, thanks to Key and to Chris for presenting the information about Monero, and we'll stand out of the way. My name's Chris, and this is Jonathan. We're part of CoinStop. We redistribute hardware wallets. If you've got any questions about that, you're more than welcome to come meet our team, and we've got some devices there that people can play around with. But today we're just going to be introducing a little bit of information about Stratis.
Yeah, we just want to make sure everyone knows we're not affiliated with them. We don't work for them. We just want to get people aware of an awesome project. Similar to the blockchains that were mentioned before, it's a platform, but we'll get into that. So hopefully everyone knows now what a blockchain is. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that it's a decentralized ledger or a distributed database. It's trustless, it's immutable, so it cannot be changed, and it's cryptographically secured.
How many people have heard of Stratis? Does anyone know Stratis? Oh, that's really cool. Interesting, cool.
So Stratis offers simple and affordable end-to-end solutions for development, testing and deployment of native C# blockchain applications on the .NET framework, which is its key value. This leads us to explain that Stratis is not an actual coin, it's not a currency, but you can represent it as a currency, but it's more of a platform. It allows developers to bridge the gap between the blockchain and the corporate world in an open source manner.
Cool, so just a little bit about the platform. I'll just touch on a couple of things. So basically the 3 major sort of parts of it are the enterprise. So blockchain is made easily for you, the token, which is what gives it the store of value, and the academy, which I think Jonathan's going to touch a little bit more on now.
So the enterprise is one of the key features of Stratis. It's the way that Stratis can offer businesses a cheap and affordable way to bring their company into a blockchain.
So the token, Strat, that's the coin, that's what fuels the power of that blockchain. So people can trade, people can earn value. That's essentially the coin, the currency behind Stratis, the platform.
And then the third key feature is the academy. So they offer basic mentoring, and you can eventually develop expertise into blockchain development and have a signature of approval to say you're now a blockchain developer in C# and .NET.
So, platform of business. So the whole idea, like Jonathan just mentioned, is the problem facing us at the moment is that we have business on one side of the field and we've got blockchain on the other. How do we connect those two? So the idea with Stratis is to be that business end-to-end solution, connecting business to blockchain and integrating, moving forward beyond just finance, industries like medical, logistics, you name it.
And they do this through the Stratis main chain. And you can look at these private chains. They're not like XMR as privacy. They're more so a business has control of this chain. And each business can speak to the Stratis main chain and then speak to another private chain. So this offers the cross-integration between companies if they both use Stratis. You have, for instance, logistics and a finance company. You can store your information of the SKU of a pallet into a token, and then when a contract is finalized and you need to make payment, you can then talk to an accounting chain or vice versa. It can go whatever you name it, and you've got the imagination you could potentially develop on the Stratis blockchain. Now there's over 8 million C# and .NET framework developers in the world. So Microsoft, Dell, they all have C# and .NET developers. What this means is it reduces the barrier that developers have when they have to learn Solidity. Ethereum is great, but this, again, is the efficient way of getting your development team that already knows C# and .NET straight into blockchain development.
Which brings us to a little bit of a comparison between some of the different projects that are offering similar things. So I'm sure a lot of people here have heard of Neo and Ethereum. Obviously Ethereum because it was mentioned a lot tonight. So you can see a couple of the differences and similarities between the projects. Circulating supply, position of market cap, what languages they use, like Jonathan said, C# with Neo and Stratis, and Solidity with Ethereum. Whether they're mining, proof of stake, proof of work, all that sort of stuff.
And I just want to comment that all three of these are platforms, and there's a few differences, but they're very similar. But one thing that you can see is Neo's at 2.2 billion on the 15th of the 8th. Ethereum is at 28 billion. I'm not saying to invest, but to me, if they're offering similar projects, Stratis has a lot of room to move, and so do all of the projects, but you're investing at your own risk. So this all could be $100 one day. We don't know.
This is not financial advice, otherwise we probably wouldn't be talking. Some of the features of Stratis, proof of stake, which I mentioned earlier, which is a little bit different to proof of work, which we will touch on if you don't know the differences between that just yet. Masternodes and the Breeze wallet, which is in production at the moment.
So proof of work and proof of stake, it's mentioned quite a lot. There's other blockchains that use proof of importance. Indorse use proof of concept. The main thing with proof of work is it's used in Bitcoin, it's used in XMR, and it uses computer power to mine the blockchain. Where proof of stake is a new way of, and I think Tom mentioned it before, it's a way of holding wealth in the blockchain, and you secure the network by holding that wealth, and you get paid for it. So instead of having to fork the money out for a mining rig, you can actually put money straight into it, start staking, and start getting rewarded.
The other feature was the masternode, so economic incentive to node operators, secures different types of on-chain and off-chain transactions, and it secures the blockchain applications and services for corporate clients. We'll expand a bit on these.
So this is Stratis' first masternode application. It's the Breeze wallet, and most blockchains are after a private solution to be very similar to cash. And this is Stratis' way of doing it. So they created a masternode, and this is another way to get rewards on top of your stakes. If you run a masternode, people send transactions through your node, either Stratis or Bitcoin, and you're rewarded a certain fee, the transaction fee they pay. Now, the Tumbler node is the master node. And something I wanted to mention, though, this is quite expensive to run, not from a computer basis, but you need to hold quite a lot of Stratis and quite a lot of Bitcoin to be able to be eligible to run a master node. Where they're staking, you can jump in straight away. And also another key feature of this is Stratis is now created Bitcoin to be private. Maybe not as private as XMR because they've got quite a few levels of privacy, but you can tumble your Bitcoins now through the Stratis chain, and it won't be on the public chain. And we've also got a few masternodes in development. They're obviously future projects. They're still getting the Breeze wallet to work, and that's coming soon, but it's they're not going to release a buggy application. They want it perfect before they release it. Payment nodes are payment channels. You can think of it along the lines of if you want to send a transaction but you don't want to wait the 10-minute confirmation time, potentially you can develop a blockchain with Stratis to allow your Bitcoin to be going through a payment channel node and then be transferred instantly, or however the parameters of the blockchain are. If it's 25 seconds, if it's 2 minutes. You've also got sidechain nodes, and this is where I was speaking about how the companies can talk between each other. They can have special features. So you can speak from an accounting company to a logistics company to a fishery. And also the identity nodes. So this is the solution to reduce the technicality of having a 25 or 35 character address. We can now, by staving our identity on a node, I'm not too sure how this works, we're not too technical, but you'll be able to send your Stratis or BTC to my name opposed to sending it to a long string of characters or to my company.
And that just brings us to Stratis price chart since its inception. So Stratis has been around for just over a year now. I think it was August 26th, Stratis came to the market. As you can see, it did a whole lot of nothing for quite some time. And then as we've had this massive market boom over the last couple of months, it's taken a massive rise to $11 US. And it's done a bit of consolidating now to sort of $5 to $6 US. So I mean, I'm not a chart analysis expert, but that looks pretty good to me. Here's a cool little stat. People love this stuff. If you invested $1,000 in Stratis on August 26th, today it would be worth $400,000. So that's a 400 times increase. I didn't do that. Should have done that.
We don't know if that's going to actually happen again, but it's nice. It's some nice stats.
If you guys will go buy Stratis, man. Just a few places that Stratis is traded and used. Bittrex, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, that's quite a large exchange. That does more than half of the volume of Stratis. Poloniex, another large exchange, does about a third, and HitBTC and Cryptopia does the remainder, roughly 15%. And I have actually heard over the last sort of 24 to 48 hours that Stratis will be getting put onto the Binance exchange. So I think I'm not too familiar with what Binance does. I don't use it personally, but I think they do voting every now and then to see what people are interested to see get adopted to the exchange, and Stratis was sort of the next coin that won that vote. So I don't know how long that will take to happen, but I guess that's another good thing because someone else can get Stratis.
This is a quote directly from Stratis. In today's digital world, hacking and theft are an increasing threat. So we've got to start thinking of the security of storing our assets. Andrea Santonopoulos says it perfectly. If you're going to put $100 worth of investments, you've got to put $100 worth of thought in securing it. If you put $1,000 worth into investing, you've got to think of $1,000 worth of security. If you think your $1,000 investment is going to be worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in the future, you should be securing it.
Well, that leads us nicely to security. So a couple of ways, some people raise their hand and they've got Stratis, so I don't know how you're holding your Stratis, but these are a few ways you can do it. Obviously one of the most secure ways is through a hardware wallet. Currently, from my understanding, the Ledger OS and the Ledger Blue are capable of holding Stratis. So they're an easy option and make it a bit nicer. Some of the other options which Jonathan can touch on.
Yeah. So the Stratis staking wallet, this is a little bit more technical than the Electrum wallet, and this is the wallet where you've got to sync with the blockchain, and then you can start locking up your Stratis to get rewards for securing the network. Then Electrum wallet, which is the desktop wallet as well, that's just for sending and receiving. You don't have to sync with the blockchain. And then the Breeze wallet, which we touched on before, for private transactions.
Cool. Thank you very much for listening to us ramble on about Stratis. If you do have any more questions, feel free to come find us and follow us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.